Hello and welcome to the Classic Car Weekly podcast, the sibling podcast to the popular weekly title. I'm this week's host, Jesse Billington, and I'm joined by a beautiful pair of guests this week. We have our content editor, James Peene,
Hello.
and our editor, David Simister.
Good to be back on.
Lovely to have you back for this is your first appearance this year, and well, we're just having a chat before we hit record about your classic fleet at the moment. How much are you prepared to spill the beans on the podcast when it comes to that front?
Oh, this is the 1998 Toyota Avensis, which I believe the correct Clarksonism is the steering is vaguer than Hugh Grant, and this follows on from a couple of advisories picked up during the MOT. This is a little bit of play either side, but I've spoken to my resident menders, and they reckon that it's going to be absolutely fine.
Okay, so not too painful a rebuilding process there at least, which is good to know. James, anything going on the Our Classic side for you? I know you're sort of still trying to carve out time to sort out the Beetle, and last time we spoke, it was more a case of classic house instead of classic car.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as it was last time, to be honest with you. I did look at the car this morning as I was on the school run, and it's got a flat tyre again. It's looking very sorry for itself. So I'll probably pump up the tyre, and that's about it for this week as I crack on with more decorating.
Fair enough. I mean, annoyingly, I have been out in the MG since the last recording, but I can't talk about it because it's all technically under embargo until sort of mid-February. So that's very much a case of watch this space. But it is courtesy of this outing. I can say that it's looking a little better in certain places. But otherwise, yeah, more to come on that front in due course. I don't know if it'll be out this weekend. In fact, it might be out this weekend, heading off to a park run with our features editor, Chris Hope, and senior contributor, James Sadlier. We're off to do the Great Denham Park Run. So if you are a listener and happen to be at Great Denham, give us a wave. Hopefully the MG will be there. But that's kind of a moot point. We'll dive into actually something else that I've been up to this week, which was heading off to a Ford dealership to pick up my dad's new Ranger. And it sort of got me wondering, have you guys got any stories from sort of heading off to dealerships as a kid, picking up family cars, or sort of that process of welcoming a new car in? There must have been sort of stories of running amok in sort of car lots looking for things that are clearly beyond your parents' budget.
I think my memories as a child were loitering around Land Rover dealerships in the north of England. So yeah, I remember many years ago we went up to Lakeland Land Rover, which is on the offset. It's on the just away, not far from Coniston in the Lake District, and we went up there to go and buy a second-hand Land Rover, and the salesman very eagerly showed us into the interior of a lovely brand new Discovery, which was leather lined, top of the range. It was a beautiful seven-seater, but my dad obviously wasn't having any of that, so we left with at that point it was a decade-old 110 V8, which sounded glorious on the way back. It was, and we had that car for about 15 years. So that was the car I went to school in. So I remember we went up there and we went to the back of what was it, my dad's Volvo 340. So that was which is long gone now. And yeah, just ended up looking around all these old Land Rovers, and that was the one we came back with from our shopping trip in the Lake District.
Oh, so was that full station wagon with the rip bench seats
Yeah,
down
that was county spec, so it had the sort of the slightly plusher seats. Yeah, the V8s as well, which he was particularly keen on. I think the fuel economy wasn't as big a thing then, but I remember he didn't want to trade it in for a diesel when petrol started going up, so he ended up kitting it out with not one but two LPG tanks in the back. So that was his way of keeping the fuel bills down. But yeah, we used to use that all the time, going back and forth.
Yeah, it's pretty healthy. They were the 3.5 as well, weren't they? They hadn't
Yeah,
done
three and a half liter OV8. It sounded magnificent.
Yeah, I can imagine. James, you must have some stories from sort of growing up and all manner of cars coming through the family, I imagine.
See, one of the reasons I got into classics because I grew to really hate being dragged around dealerships on the weekend by my dad, especially Ford dealerships. So I can remember many wasted hours in Cox's Motors and others in Leicestershire, as my dad sort of tried to thrash out a deal on an Orion or an Estor or whatever. And I remember always looking at like the gears, and thinking, why not go for that one because that's got the cool badge on the side and the decent seats and the nice alloys. And we'd always come out with like a GL, whatever it was. He'd always managed to sort of negotiate mats and flaps as like an optional extra, which now seems even more ridiculous, isn't it? Free mats and flaps when you buy a car. But I can really remember one time when we went to look at I think it was a Capri Gear. Was it Capri? No, it was Capri Laser. It was a Capri Laser, and my dad took us all down there. Me, my brother, and my sister, and got us all in the back. And my sister couldn't sit in the back because there wasn't a seat. There was just like the little hump, and he was trying to work out whether or not he could get away with it. And in the end, it just didn't happen. But I remember the disappointment on his face when he just couldn't fit his family in it. He had one too many children.
Oh, that's got to be gutting, realizing that you can't legally get away with having a Capri as the family car. That's, oh no. So this is the thing, this is where my youth sort of falls a bit flat, is all of my sort of car buying experience as a kid was always being dragged to a Toyota dealership or certainly as a very young boy, a Mitsubishi dealership to look at the new pickup trucks because we always had one through dad's work. So we're always dragged off, look at the new L200, here you go, I need it in grey. And we started off with them with the open back. And then when we got dog, we had the Truckman boxes on it. So it was never anything truly exciting. It was just sort of stood in the commercials end of an dealership while my dad goes, do you do it in grey? And they're going, yep. And we're like, perfect, that's about it. And we sort of want like the most mid-range one. And then all of a sudden I'm stood sort of as the tech correspondent for my dad, pointing out all the new things that his truck can do. And he goes, so what does that mean in layman's terms? I'm like, it means you can have your phone on the big screen in the middle. He's like, oh, that's good. And it's the new FEV one, so we've got proper timing chain to it, no wet belt issues there. And just sort of getting him used to all the technology on it. I'm like, oh, this is a bit more exciting now. At least I can take part in the buying process. But we weren't even supposed to have the hybrid either from the starting point. The salesman ticked the wrong box. We were supposed to have the 2 litre diesel, and then they proudly phone up and they go, Mr. Billington, your new truck's here, and they send in the paperwork, and he goes, this is 2.2 petrol hybrid. I wanted the diesel, and they're like, ah, problem. And it had already been like a sort of 9 month wait to get this one built. So it's like, I'm not going to wait another 9 months and try and build it again. So we'll just take this one and haggle them down. So it's been, yeah, certainly an interesting buying process. But what I wanted to do with this was open this up actually to listeners and readers alike to get in touch with their stories of sort of either being children dragged around car dealerships or indeed as adults, sort of their interesting run-ins, buying sort of certainly cars from decades gone by, because I think there's certainly some interesting stories there, and the fact that the same pattern of salesman always seems to reappear. So it's certainly an interesting one, sort of a bit like a conversational the way we were, set entirely inside a car dealership.
I think if anything, actually, I was the one dragging the parents around the dealerships back when I was a kid. Because I don't know if either of you ever this, but so, yeah, because I needed to get out of it more, I used to get the brochures from the dealerships. I used to love doing that when I was a kid. So I remember my late uncle. Yeah, I think I was doing about 9 or 10, but I remember, yeah, we went and I insisted he took me to the Southport Mercedes-Benz dealership, and I was there, and I remember him looking very, very awkward while the dealer was asking whether he'd be interested in a new C-Class, and I was there, like, rummaging around getting the dealership. I remember picking up the brochure for the silver anniversary anniversary edition of the SL, which must have been about 97, 98, and I was there, piling up all these brochures and then like whisking them off. But yeah, that was it. When I used just to get loads of brochures from dealerships, I've got a huge batch of them still in the shed.
I suppose they're probably quite collectible items now as well. There'll be someone out
Yeah.
there to
Well,
snap those.
you can buy them at the if you go to like the Classic Motor Show at the NEC, you can there are people who will sell them to you.
Mm. I've always wondered if I could try and find like one of the original brochures for my car because I've got a few bits of sales bump from when the MG initially launched, but I'd love to try and sort of get some more of that sort of paperwork from its period because I think they were always advertised in such an interesting way. I know that definitely spoken about it before. There's a great shot in one of the brochures of a yellow rubber bumper midget parked up in clearly a historic single-seater workshop where they're sort of it's parked up and then next to it they're working on what looks like sort of a classic Formula 3 car. And I'm like, you don't sell cars in an interesting way anymore like that. It's always just sort of a flashy shot of it on clearly a Spanish open road, and they go some sort of marketing sentence next to it, and you're like, doesn't compel me.
See, weirdly enough, I had a conversation with somebody else earlier about brochures. When my mum and dad moved into a house a few houses ago, the guy who lived there beforehand had collected Porsche brochures. So he had literally well over 1,000 of these brochures from the 60s right the way through the 80s, up to the 90s. And they were just in a back room, and I came home one day from school, and my dad had taken them to the dump and just tipped them all. And you think, I wonder what they were worth now to a Porsche enthusiast.
No,
They
that's an absolute tragedy.
They'd probably be worth a pretty penny. I mean, Porsche have always nailed it when it comes to like the advertising and the brochures, but I don't know if any of you saw the really nice animation they did. I think I can't remember if it was in the run up to the New Year or the run up to Christmas, but it was this sort of really nice, properly hand drawn, hand animated series of sort of a guy with a classic Porsche taking it out to sort of meets and events and shows and showcasing sort of the fun and the culture that you get to experience when owning a Porsche. And it was this really interesting idea of it's not selling you a specific model, but just selling you the idea of owning a Porsche. And when so many car manufacturers are sort of relying on AI and sort of moving away from this very human aspect, Porsche had leaned into it the other way and sort of gone, no, what if we actually had someone animate this brilliant advert in this way that sort of convinces you that owning a Porsche is a thing to do as a human because you have these friendly experiences. And it sort of tells a story just through sort of his rear window filling up with sort of stickers and badges from meets. And it was this really sort of nice piece of environmental storytelling that really sort of goes, oh, yeah, there is something to it, which I quite like. And again, it's that sort of lost art of properly trying to sell you a car.
Well, that's it. That car is an extension of your personality, isn't it? It says a lot about who you are, what you're into. I
Mm.
think, which kind of that makes me wonder why my dad dragged us around a dealership to sit in a Bedford Rascal a long, long time ago. You know, you get the whole family in the back of that. I remember that being
Oh,
a
I'd
bright
love to
yellow
have the
Bedford
Bedford
Rascal.
Rascal. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I
no,
see,
I would now.
but I don't know why. They seem kind of fun. They
I
seem
seem
like
to remember as well. There was a stage where you could get a sticker for the back, a Pygmy Troop Carrier, they were called.
I don't think they'd be able to sell it with that badging anymore, which is a shame. But no, dealership stories. We'd love to hear your stories from sort of picking up cars, classic cars, modern cars. If you were obviously you're not younger at the time. It'd be great to sort of hear your interesting anecdotes from times gone by when it comes to picking up and buying new cars or even second-hand cars, because certainly the second-hand car market often has some great stories attached to it. But the one thing I want to sort of look into this week is actually what forms our lead story. It's this sort of phenomenon of car spreading, I think is the official phrase used, and the fact that giant modern cars are starting to put classic cars a little bit at risk on the roads. And we've obviously sort of heard from a couple of clubs and representatives saying that sort of the size of modern SUVs is a bit overpowering if you're in a smaller classic car. And have you guys had experiences of this where you've been out on the road in an classic car, a smaller car, and just felt a bit bullied around by the general size of modern traffic?
James, you were talking about you were saying you were out in a Mini Cooper not long ago and you had a bit of a size difference issue.
Yeah, definitely. I alluded to that in the story, but basically, I was out in this original Mini Cooper and out on the road. I realised that the roof of the Mini was below the height of the SUV part next to us in traffic. It's like there's no way, unless you look down, you're going to see me. So sitting at the same height as like someone's wheel is really disconcerting.
Mm. You do just vanish a bit into blind spots, and yeah, modern cars have blind spot sort of sensors and things. But the amount of times if I'm in the MG and I'm sort of driving along, it doesn't get picked up by sort of a blind spot sensor. And if a quick glance in the mirror also therefore won't show that I'm there, you do feel a little bit vulnerable when you're sort of going past or pulling up next to sort of far larger vehicles at traffic lights. Even things, I think the one thing that absolutely threw me for a loop was the BMW X7. I didn't realize how absolutely enormous it was until I pulled up in next to one in the MG and realized I'm barely any taller than the alloy wheels or the wheel arches in that sat down. I'm like, that's terrifying. And it's worse when you imagine the fact that these are cars used for the school runs. There's going to be in an environment where there's children running around and moving around and you can't see a child beyond the end of the bonnet, that is more of a concern. As much as it is a pain for sort of classic car users to feel a bit threatened, I think there is a greater question about the safety and security of these cars.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because I mean, I've always been used to. Yeah, I grew up with the idea of an MGB GT being a relatively long and sort of large-ish car. And not long ago, I mean, obviously, I drove around in an MGB GT for years, and increasingly, it felt like a really, actually tiny car compared to all the modern cars around us. But I was actually in the behind the wheel not long ago of an MG HS, I think it's called, the new model.
Mm.
And I remember reversing it into a normally sized car parking space, and there was another largest crossover part next to me, and when you opened the door, you couldn't get out. That
Yeah.
was the thing that surprised me. I've always been used to the idea in the Toyota or the Mazda or my Simister, you'd go in, you'd reverse it into a parking space and you'd have loads of room either side of you to get out because you were well within the lines. With these newer cars, you're right up against the white lines on either side of the space, and the BMW X5 that's invariably parked next to you is the same. So you got these tiny, tiny little letterbox slots to try and maneuver yourself out of in the certainly if not far from our offices. Every time I go to the Queensgate Centre in Peterborough, you're there squeezing out of the tiniest spaces to try and get out to the shops in because all these spaces originally were designed for Austin 1100s in the 1960s.
But if you compare a car that you think's not really changed in size, so I've got a photo of when I had a 911, a 997 parked next to my 912 at the
Mm,
time, and just the growth in size of a 911 compared to what it used to be in the 60s is crazy. They're massive cars now. Even like a slim hip one is still a ginormous car in comparison. And my 912, I was leaving the NEC from the Classic Motor Show a few years back, and there was a lorry filtering across, and he just filtered all the way across and hit me. Took the side of
mm,
the car out, and he got out. And he said, "I just didn't see you," and I was on the horn hooting him, and he still
yeah.
didn't see me. But that's just like how it goes when you've got a classic car, is that no one looks down at see you, and they can't hear your horn because it sounds like a penny whistle.
Yeah, I mean, I remember years ago I was in my Mini. It was at a set of lights, and they have we have in you have like often you have these in like towns or villages. You'll have those kind of those parking spaces where you park nose onto the pavement.
Mm.
And I was at a set of lights, and the guy came out of a shop, got into his Mercedes Sprinter, which happened to be adjacent to where I was at the lights. Got in the car, put it in reverse, and reversed straight into the side of me. And again, he had no idea I was even there because my car was so much smaller than his Merc Sprinter that he just didn't see it at all.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those things. The midget really suffers for it on account of being low, and despite being quite sort of raughty sounding and bright yellow, you'd think you'd spot it or hear it coming. But the amount of times that even just sort of regular road traffic, not even lorries and vans with sort of bigger blind spots, just modern traffic just forgets that you're there or hasn't seen you sort of arrive next to it at a junction when you've got two lanes to go straight on round a roundabout. The amount of people that have tried to crush me to the inside and I've had to sort of absolutely lay into the horn, and usually if I've got the roof or windows down, yell as well, just to try and have some attention drawn to me. And the people then sort of inevitably sort of look out and sort of go, well, there's nothing there, and then look down and go, oh, Christ, and then sort of avert from some sort of collision. But it's far more common than it ought to be, and I can see why certainly a lot of people would find it a bit disconcerting taking classics on a longer drive when you're more likely to encounter this, and especially sort of going into busier traffic areas where you're encountering sort of simply just larger traffic regardless. I can understand why it's a bit of a sort of a threat feels like too strong a phrase, but certainly something that would be a concern. Like you never want to sort of look out your window and all you can see is one lorry wheel and go, oh well, I'm going under that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the times when I'm out in older cars now, I actually head out in quieter times because it's a better vibe. I tend to find if you're going out, very either very early morning or later at night because a lot of the traffic, the people heading to and from work, they've all done what they need to do, so the roads are a lot quieter. It just means and you spend less time queuing as well.
Mm. Makes for a slightly easier drive in a classic, but even that, yeah, it's just one of those things. It's the changing world around, and obviously, I think we're naturally going to sort of collide with it using historic and classic vehicles. As the world moves on, it is going to be that sort of counterpoint, but at the same time, I never struggle finding somewhere to park the MG because it slots into pretty much every space, and despite the fact that I need to completely open the door to sort of fall out of it, I've always got enough room in a modern-sized gargantuan parking bay. But I also enjoy doing the thing where you park all the way to the back of it, tucked in between two cars. So if someone's driving along and thinks there's a gap there, I'll have that, and then inevitably finds my car tucked right at the back of it and going, nope, taken. It is deeply fun watching people do it as you sort of wander back to your car and see people going, oh, there's a space. No, there isn't.
I'm still thinking about buying a I don't know if it counts as going into classicdom yet. I would love to have, the Toyota IQ.
Mm.
I mean, I remember like test driving those when they were new, and I remember being utterly won over by those. But again, it's one of the few modern cars that again really cleverly packages things that is very much in the spirit of the original Mini. And you never know, I might get one. And I don't know if it's too old or too new for CCW at this stage, but it's getting there. It's getting there.
I'd say that possibly too new for Classic Car Weekly. They launched in
Yes.
2008, so it's really pushing it a bit. And
Mm.
they're still quite a modern car. They were still on sale as late as 2015 here in
Oh
Europe.
yeah, that's it. Well, when I bought the Toyota, I mean, that was originally that was a cheap run around as well. But
Mm.
it's kind of as I've gradually not sold it, it's gradually worked its way into rarer young timer territory.
So I think you could justify it if you bought the Aston Martin Signet, the one, especially the one they slotted the 4.7 litre V8 into. That would be an interesting entry to the
That
RS.
would be amazing, but I sadly do not have the requisite pennies for an Aston Signet lying around because they really have gone up over the last couple of years.
Especially the one-off that they shoved the V8 into, which was, I think it was done. I can't remember if it was done for just sort of like, yeah, it was a one customer deal. He said, "Look, I would very much like it to have the V8 in it." So Aston Martin went, well, "We'll give it our best shot," and yeah, plumbed it all together. It had sort of the mechanicals off the Vantage S, so you get 430 horsepower in a car that usually had maybe 97 on a good day, and all of a sudden your 0 to 60 dropped from about 12 to I think it was 4.2 was what they managed to get it down to. But it looked an incredibly skittish little thing. I think it's been up the Goodwood Hill, and you've got all that power in an incredibly short and squat wheelbase and wheel track. You're like, that's going to very quickly get out of hand.
Maybe that's what we could do. We could have as our next, like, we could have a classic car weekly race. We could have one of those Aston Signets. James can get a Bedford Rascal. We can drop a Hayabusa engine into it, and then we can have a drag race and see who wins.
Yeah,
Don't tell me, I would love a Bedford Rustle people carrier now. That'd be
Get
absolutely
a bike
amazing.
engine in it, and it would just absolutely fly, and then roll over at the end. I imagine.
yeah, it sort of begs the question, what's the most ridiculous inter-brand engine swap you could have? Because obviously if you classified the Aston Martin Signet as being an Aston Martin product, you've got some pretty meaty engines. And the same with the Bedford Rascal if you just called it the Suzuki Carry originally, wasn't it? So you could drop in
That's it. You could
one of
drop a
that.
Hayabusa engine in it.
Yeah.
It'd still technically be an on-brand engine.
Yeah, I think that'd be it's a sort of interesting scope for sort of how far do you stretch it? Like, do you take a Volkswagen Polo and drop in sort of Volkswagen's like diesel V10 and just sort of see what kind of nonsense you can create? I think there's scope for Classic Car Weekly's wackiest classic engine swaps there.
Got a Veyron engined Volkswagen Caddy. That would be something else.
I mean, people do engine swap those caddies. I've
Oh,
seen
they
quite
do.
VR6s
I don't think
shoved.
anyone's ever dropped a Veyron to V16 and so on, though.
I
Not
don't
yet.
I don't think you can get those on eBay, particularly as like a crate engine W16. Just sort of go, yeah, buy one of those for a few £1,000.
I'm sure they got cheap ones on Temu.
You'd be surprised what they do and don't have on there. But anyway, no, it's yeah, the car spreading thing is an interesting one. I mean, we've got plenty of other interesting bits of news, including the revival of the Round Britain sort of racing series. So this initially started out in the 1970s. I don't know if either of you have, or sort of around in the late 70s. I don't know if either of you are quite old enough to remember the original Avon Tour of Britain, which was essentially the idea of pitting racing drivers against rally drivers in a series of essentially family saloon cars on racetracks and rally stages around the UK. And it had all sorts of winners: James Hunt, Graham Hill, Roger Clark, all tackled it in period, as well as a number of other rally drivers as well. And it was great because it was just a series of sort of Hillman Hunters, Ford Escorts, absolutely door handling it around sort of popular racing circuits and then going and doing a rally stage. And I know Motor Racing Legends have brought it back. So I want to sort of completely unprepared pick your brains on what you think would be the best classic car that could tackle both a rally stage and then a road racing circuit as well.
Any size, any budget in mind? Is it just keeping it completely open?
Completely open to classic cars. So obviously the rules and regs for the revival version of it haven't been completely laid down, but they're going to try and focus on completely tax exempt and right the way through to vintage as well. So it's going to be open to sort of 20s, 30s, 40s as well. So
I think for me, it's going to have to be it would have to either be a Mini or a Jaguar XK120 because both of those have
ooh,
proven in period that they can tackle rallies and win them, and also taken part in circuit racing and won. So yeah, that those would be my two safe bets if you're going to take a classic.
didn't think of the Jaguar. I had the Mini in mind because obviously very iconic on the rally scene, especially as the Monte Carlo Rally kicks off. I think it's this weekend. But yeah, the Jag is an interesting choice. James, what are you going to pick?
Box seat and 80s Audi Quattro.
Oh, that's going to be an interesting one, certainly. They have got scope to enter Quattros into this as well, so I think it's going to be interesting. They're going to obviously have to bracket it because there's no fun pairing the Quattro against a sort of early Cooper S. But yeah, Quattro is going to have a fairly good crack at things. For me, I think you can't do much better than a Mark 1, Mark 2 Escort, really, especially when it comes to a rally stage. Those things are so at home when it comes to the slidey stuff, and you won't be necessarily the quickest around the race circuits over a series of laps, but you will have a good time doing it and a great chance to slide it around. But no, it was I got invited down to the launch of that event at Thruxton, and it was interesting sort of getting to speak to a few people there about sort of why reviving this now and why doing this now. And sort of part of the idea is just trying to get classics actually out and about on the roads, on the link stages between all these events to make it this sort of giant rolling showcase of historic metal. So it's going to be really interesting to see this come together. It's launching officially in 2027 once they've got all the circuits on board, but they've done well already with the likes of Blenheim Palace also agreeing to hosting one of the special stages. And they've never sort of not, they've done it once or twice in the old sort of rally days in the UK. But this is Blenheim sort of stepping back up to hosting rallies, and it's going to be quite special, I think, to get to spectate classic rally cars flying around Blenheim Palace.
Yeah, it'll be a proper blast from the past, won't it? I think that's what it's all about.
Going to be very interesting indeed. They've also got Shelsley Walsh signed up for the hill climb, offering that as one of the special stages too. So you've got Castle Combe, Thruxton, as well as Eppenton Caerwan hosting rally stages. So it's going to be a big one. And I will admit it was quite a fun launch as well because they had also at Thruxton they'd booked out the auto solo circuit, so quickly became a competition between me and some of my friends as to who could absolutely pin the Caterham round there without looking too much like it was getting out of control, which was good fun. But no, very interesting day, and you can read all about that in the latest Out and About section. Elsewhere in the issue, we take a look back at 50 years of Retromobile. David, you're a regular attendee of the show. James, have you been before?
No, I've never done it. No, it's one of those ones on the list on the to do maybe one day. But I believe one of us is covering it this year anyway, aren't we?
Well, actually, our good friend Mr. James Sadler, he's heading to Paris to cover that for us. It'll be next week, off the top of my head.
Sending off our French correspondent to go and enjoy some lovely Parisian motors. But no, there's always been it's one of the ones that again I've not done it yet and would love to try and get along to it when I've got because it just seems to be one of those shows that pulls together some of the strangest and most brilliant strings of the classic car world.
Yeah, it's not it's gathers kind of a really big international cast of classics, and it's not tricky to get to at all. It's either you fly into Charles de Gaulle from any big major UK airport, or you get the Eurostar, and it's RER or Metro across Paris. It's really simple to get to, and well worth doing if you ever get the chance.
So certainly one to look forward to. And a final point, David, obviously at the weekend you were over at the FBHVC's Club Expo. If we could ask
Yes.
you to sort of compress this into a nutshell, what would you say was your big story coming away from that?
I think a lot a couple of big things. I mean, there's a lot of talk about E5 protection grade petrol. That's going to be that is due to be reviewed by the government later this year. We don't know if it will or not because nobody's actually confirmed yet, but it is due to be reviewed in September this year. The enthusiasts obviously are looking to make sure that stays on the forecourts. There's also a lot of talk around as well Drive It Day. So that's obviously coming on 26th of April, and the Messerschmitt Enthusiast Club, which very sadly is deciding to wind up after 60 years of looking after these wonderful, quirky micro cars. Their final parting gesture is they're going to pay for all those Drive It Day rally plaques that go on the front of your car. They're going to pay for all of those to be made, which means that when you buy your rally plaque for Drive It Day, driveitday.co.uk if you're interested, all of the money, literally all of it, will go to helping Childline. So a very worthy cause.
Oh, that is fantastic news. And yeah, very sad to see the club having to wind up, but it's nice they're sort of making the effort to go out on a sort of a positive high there.
Yeah, definitely. It's a shame because I have driven a Messerschmitt before. They are belting good fun, and yeah, I'm hoping that anyone who thinks of following suits, they are well catered for in the club scene.
Mm. But there's a car that would feel properly tiny parked next to modern traffic and Messerschmitt. But no, a lot to look forward to in this week's issue, which should be out on shop shelves as we speak. There's also a look back at the Bicester Scramble. We mentioned that on last week's podcast, a brilliant show. Didn't expect to spot on a Healy Fiesta there, very rare car, and yeah, quite a unique find. And of course, we've got a celebration of the Jaguar XK8 as that turns 30. And I'm assuming at least one of you has probably got experience of this series of Jaguar at some point in time.
Believe it, I've never driven a Jag XK. I've driven the XJR on many occasions, but not the XK.
James, surely you must have
Yeah,
dabbled at some
yeah,
point.
I've driven a few of them. Cars. I remember at the time thinking they were a bit too old manish for me, but I think I'm now probably definitely in that zone where I would suit one quite well.
They are quite nice cars, and I think they're picking up a little bit on the market as well. I think a younger generation is also coming to them, realizing it's a really interesting way of getting your hands on a sort of a V8 sports car, certainly almost a British muscle car in that sense, in that sort of very cropped cabin and sort of long nose with a really potent V8 under the front. So yeah, there's certainly a younger interest in them as well from sort of my end of the scene. So we've got plenty to look at in this week's issue, but we've got a lot of production still to go on next week's. So yeah, I will leave you guys to crack on with the final touches to production, unless you've got anything else to add.
No, just to wish everyone have a great weekend with your classics.
Yeah, get out there and enjoy it. Though the weather looks to be a bit changeable in places, so yeah, wrap up and at least this now you won't have to wash the salt off the bottom of your cars because it seems to have mostly been washed away this week. Otherwise, gents, thank you very much for joining me this week, and we'll be back next week with another issue of Classic Car Weekly and another edition of the Classic Car Weekly podcast.